It looks like all of our live, thank you. It looks like all of our live streams are now up and running in English, Spanish, and Vietnamese. So thank you all for joining us today. Good evening. Today we are hosting the forum for the Santa Ana mayoral candidate. This forum is being hosted by Latino Health Access, Santa Ana Building Healthy Communities, the Kennedy Commission, and Viet Rise, with moderation by the Voice of OC. So we do want to state that all the organizations that are hosting this forum are nonprofit organizations, and therefore we do not endorse or oppose any candidates or political parties. We're happy to offer this opportunity for the community to hear from and get to know the candidates. Due to time constraints, we will not be taking questions from viewers. However, we are happy to share that all of the questions that will be asked today have been created with input from community residents and organizations. And this forum is being live streamed in English, Spanish, and Vietnamese. We want to give a quick shout out to our interpreters. Providing interpretation in Spanish are Veronica Perez and Yuvia Catena, and in Vietnamese it is J2. If you are interested in listening to the forum in Spanish, please go to Latino Health Access Facebook page. If you are interested in listening in Vietnamese, please go to the Viet Rise Facebook page. And I would now like to introduce our moderator. Our moderator is Norvetto Santana Jr. He is a publisher and editor-in-chief for Voice of OC, a nonprofit news agency in Orange County. Norvetto is an award-winning investigative reporter with more than 2 decades reporting experience across Southern California's top news stations. We are happy to have him here tonight, moderator.
Thank you, Isuri.
And
really
before I...
Go ahead.
Thank you, Norvetto. Sorry, and I will be giving the word to Norvetto, but I just want to briefly announce that we did promote tonight's forum as a forum for both the Board of Supervisors District 1 candidates and the Santa Ana mayoral candidates. Unfortunately, tonight will only be a forum for the mayoral candidates. Both of the candidates for District 1 were unavailable to join us today, but our moderator, who we're very happy to have here today, Norvetto, will be providing us with some information on that.
You want me to do that race right now, Isuri?
Yes, please.
Sure. So again, welcome everybody to another wonderful mayoral candidates debate. Thanks to all of the candidates that are here with us today. And again, thanks to all of the organizers, Latino Health Access, the Santa Ana Building Healthy Communities Coalition, Viet Rise, and the Kennedy Commission. All these groups just doing a great job of giving us some access, some nonpartisan access to information. Since the 2 candidates for the county supervisors race weren't able to join us, I can offer listeners or viewers just a brief description of, it's a very important race. The county supervisors control a $7 billion annual spending budget that impacts just about everything that you could think of when it comes to quality of life: law enforcement, homelessness, mental health, social services, healthcare. It's a huge agency. Much of the first district, it really encompasses Santa Ana, Garden Grove, Westminster, the northern part of Fountain Valley, and unincorporated Midway City. Right now, there is a 4-to-1 Republican supermajority on that board. If Democrats were to pick up a seat during this election, it would craft a 3-2 Republican majority. I think because of that, it's attracted a lot of outside money. The incumbent, Andrew Doe, who has been in office, I think would be going into his 3rd term. He finished out 1 term, did his other, and this would be his reelection. He is largely backed by the Orange County Deputy Sheriff's Union, which has spent about $855,000 promoting him through independent expenditures this year. And that's kind of a lot in terms of recent spending on that seat. And I think, again, it has to do with the large partisan appeal that the seat has attracted. At the same time, Sergio Contreras, a Westminster City Council member who is running against him, is largely backed by trade unions, the Orange County Labor Federation, and individual donors. With the majority of his support seems to be coming from donors of $2,100 or less. Andrew Doe, the incumbent, has run a campaign largely on the fact that he has, as he says, helped the county navigate towards reopening during the coronavirus pandemic, has also responded in terms of homelessness and affordable housing throughout his term. Sergio Contreras takes issue with that and basically criticizes the county government's response to the coronavirus, as well as the county government's response to homelessness, and in addition, the lack of affordable housing. Any of you that want to see more details on the race can go to voiceofoc.org. We have lots of write-ups historically on both officials and both races. And so that should be able to give you a decent idea of the issues in the race for your interest. The other thing that I would point out to people that are interested to get more information about both candidates, they can go to the ballot statements that are put out by the Orange County Registrar of Voters. Those are online as well as printed. You should have those in the mail if you're a registered voter for that area. And there you can basically see what the two candidates have put forth in terms of their arguments of why they should be elected. So in short, that's, I think, what we can give everybody to give a decent sense of what's out there for you. Isuri?
Thank you, Norvetto, for that. I'm now gonna just show a quick presentation, just very brief presentation, going into how historic of an election this is. Specifically in Santana, this is a very historic mayoral race. I'm gonna go ahead and share my screen for it. Can everybody see my screen? So this election for mayor here in Santana is historic, and it's one of the most pivotal elections in decades because the city of Santana will have a new mayor for the first time in 26 years. Miguel Pulido, who is our current mayor, was elected in 1994 and has been mayor ever since. In 2012, voters approved Measure GG, which imposed an 8-year term limit on the office of mayor. Miguel Pulido couldn't run for re-election. And seeking his open seat, which is elected at large, are 6 candidates, some of them current politicians on the dais, others newcomers or returnees. And we just also want to provide you all with some information on how you can vote this year and how you can return your ballot. Everybody should have received their ballot via mail. So the first way that you can return it is by mail. You can go ahead and drop it at any local post office or any mailbox, and there is no stamp required. You can also drop it off at a ballot drop box. For a list of official drop boxes, see your voter guide section 8 or visit ocvote.com. If you are using a ballot drop box, please make sure that you are using an official ballot drop box. And in the image, you can see they're white and yellow, and they will say that they're official ballot. And the last way you can vote this year is with voting centers. The voting centers will be open October 30th through November 3rd. And at these voting centers, there are various services available. You can go drop off your ballot. You can vote in person. You can get a replacement ballot if you make a mistake. You can also receive voting assistance. And if you did not register to vote, you can also register there and vote at the same time. So please make sure that you vote this year. And if you need any assistance, you can contact any of the organizations. And now going back to you, Norvetto.
Thank you, Isuri. So we'll start our candidate introductions. We'll go for 1.5 minutes for any responses. We'll keep the introductions to 1 minute for each candidate. We do have, I believe, 5 candidates with us here tonight. 5. And so we'll basically go in there. We'll ask you all to stay to your time limits. We will enforce them strictly to just kind of be respectful to everybody and fair and keep things moving along. So what I'll do is just kind of start with asking each one of the candidates to give us a minute introduction as to why they're running for office. Claudia Alvarez, can you hear us? Could you start?
Absolutely, Norberto. Nice to see you again. Love your garage. The background looks very impressive. Good evening, everyone. I'm Claudia Alvarez, President of the Board of Trustees.
Claudia, you went on mute.
You know, my message said that I was muted by the host, so I'm not sure.
Let's start you over.
Okay.
Okay. Start over.
I already talked about your beautiful background, so I'm going to start with my official statement. Good evening, everyone. I'm Claudia Alvarez, President of the Board of Trustees for the Rancho Santiago Community College District and candidate for Mayor of the City of Santa Ana. Thank you to everyone that has chosen to be here with us instead of the presidential debate. As they say, all politics are local, so thank you for your interest in the future of our beautiful city of Santa Ana. It's great to be amongst organizations that I've worked with for years, and I look forward to working with them in the near future as mayor of this city. For those of you that don't know me, I've been around for a long time. I tell people I'm 29, but actually I've been around a little longer than that. I've been a resident of Santa Ana for 40 years. I've been a council member and mayor pro tem for 12 years, 6 as mayor pro tem. I've been part of your board of trustees, president this year for 8 years, and I've been a prosecutor fighting crime for you, the people, for 21 years. I look forward to the excitement of the 26 years, but I look forward to serving with the people that Santa Ana choose. We have a great opportunity. I am that experienced leader Santa Ana seeking, but Alvarez for mayor 2020. Thank you.
Thank you, Claudia. Jose, can you tell us a little bit about why you're running for mayor?
Yes, good evening, everybody. My name is Jose Solorio. I'm a city council member in Santa Ana. I was born in Michoacan, Mexico. Came as an infant to California. My parents were farm workers, and I worked in the farm myself, actually, six, 7 summers as well. Started when I was 13, so that's how I learned hard work. And I've been working hard in college, and then here in the community. I went to UC Irvine for undergraduate school, and so I've been around in Orange County since then. I've been a resident here of Santa Ana now for 25 years. You know how time flies. I have a master's in public policy from Harvard, a bachelor's degree from UC Irvine. I have local city council experience, regional government experience through OCTA and some water districts, and state assembly. Thank you to the voters of Santa Ana, Anaheim, and Garden Grove that elected me 3 consecutive terms to the state assembly. My priorities are public safety, families and neighborhoods. And then finally, I mentioned I was a son of farm workers. My kids went to public schools here. Very proud of that. I'm bilingual, accessible.
Jose, time's up. Time's up. Rules, come on. Let's
I had it 1 minute and 15 seconds, so
1 minute, 1 minute. 1 minute is 1
change
minute.
it to 1:30, Norberto.
What do you mean? It's for the
I
answer.
thought it went to 1 minute and 30 seconds.
Intros is 1.
Okay, fair enough.
No problem. And I apologize. That's my misunderstanding, maybe. George, can you tell us why you're running for mayor? And again, it's a minute. And if anything, try to speak slow. I get this wrong every time. I speak too fast, and the translators have a challenge keeping up. So I just remind everybody. George, you're on.
I will be happy to speak slow, but I have to note that I've been dropped 5 times. So if we get dropped here, please work with me on that. And I want to apologize to everybody. I'm a little bit upset because I had to go down to 4th Street today and work with a bunch of the people in the restaurant and some people from the city. And you almost need a Humvee to drive down 4th Street, and nobody's doing anything to correct it. And it's a standard problem we have in Santa Ana. Everything seems to be good enough for Santa Ana. It's good enough for Santa Ana if you fall into a 4-foot hole. And I'm just tired of it today, and I've gotten a little bit upset, so I'm apologizing up front. And that's one of the reasons I'm running for mayor. Santa Ana can be better than that. Santa Ana is better than that. We don't have to have potholes. I've driven about 2,100 miles in my car around Santa Ana in the past 6 weeks looking at everything. And I can tell when I drive out of Santa Ana and I drive back into Santa Ana by the roughness and the terrible condition of the roads. We've had a city run down for 25 years, and it's just getting worse. And we're trying to find ways to blame it on somebody else, and it's our issue. We have to disperse money. We have to lower the sales tax so we can get more money in. We have to bring business in so we can get things done. Is that it? I'm sorry.
Yeah, that's okay.
Thank you.
Vicente, can you tell us why you're running for mayor?
Sure. Buenas noches. I'm Vicente Sarmiento, council member for the city of Santa Ana and also president of the Orange County Water District. My family's been in Santa Ana since 1965. We came as, first generation immigrants. I attended John Muir, Sierra, Willard, and after that, I received my economics degree from Berkeley and my law degree from UCLA. On the council, my priority issues have been to deal with issues of affordable housing, deal with issues of immigration policy, deal with open government and transparency issues, and investing in youth. So hopefully, given the opportunity, I hope to extend the body of work that I've done in those areas as your mayor. It's been a privilege to serve and represent the residents here in the city that I grew up in. Thank you, Norvetto.
Thank you, Vicente. Mark Lopez, are you there? Mark?
Mark will be joining us by phone shortly.
Okay.
And I think he might have just joined.
We'll give him just a second.
Mark, you appear muted by phone. You may have to press *6 or *9.
Can you hear me, Mark? Mark? Mark?
I think he disconnected. He might connect again.
Do we want to move on to questions and we can have him introduce himself? Do you want to wait for him? How would the organizers like to deal with that? So bear with us just a few minutes. We have one candidate that's facing some technical challenges. I think everybody these days, whether it's on Zoom, if systems are a bit overloaded. And a bit of this could be challenging for different candidates. I know myself, it gets slow sometimes where I'm at, as Claudia mentioned, here in the garage.
I'm happy to help you set up a green screen one day.
Yeah, I gotta get to those. I'm always living on deadlines, so I have yet to, sometimes we just keep going. Yeah, you guys have all good backgrounds.
It looks like Mark just rejoined by phone. Mark, we need you to unmute. We're not able to unmute you on our end. You're now unmuted, Mark.
Mark, can you hear us?
Mark, please make sure that your phone doesn't show that it's on mute.
Can you hear me?
We
Yeah.
can hear you now, Mark.
Oh, great. Sometimes these technical difficulties, every time it's something different. Oh, okay.
No issues. Mark, you have a minute to introduce yourself, and the responses to the questions will be limited to a 1.5 minute deadline. Or time.
Yes, sir. I read all the requirements, sir.
Okay. So please tell us why you're running for mayor.
Yes, my name is Mark Lopez. I'm running for mayor because one of the primary things I want to do for the city, as most citizens I found out do not know this, that the mayor is a ceremonial position and the council is a part-time position. I would like, one of my goals is to propose that we amend the city charter to create a full-time mayor and a full-time city council, because we are a growing city. We're experiencing the big pains of a big city, and we're the hub of all the civic action in Santa Ana. I think it's time we develop a full-time mayor and city council. I think it'd be most beneficial to the residents of Santa Ana, as opposed to having a city manager who doesn't live in the area deal with our situations. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Mark. So we'll move on to the first question. And we'll do the first one here, has to do with resident engagement. One of the reasons that the newly drawn district boundaries were made possible for this election is due to a lawsuit that was spearheaded by Asian Americans Advancing Justice, which argued that the previous district lines were disenfranchising Asian American residents, particularly 11,000 Vietnamese residents who in large part live on the West Side ward. And again, the entire Vietnamese population in Santa Ana is about 11% of the entire city. Ward 1 now includes this population of Vietnamese and Asian American Pacific Islander residents. The question is, what efforts have you taken to meaningfully engage Vietnamese residents prior to this election and during this election? And what will you do to ensure that Vietnamese, Asian American, Pacific Islander residents are actively and meaningfully engaged in city affairs? Jose, why don't we start with you?
Yes, thank you. I've been very active with the Vietnamese community for many years, starting when I was on the council. My first tour of duty, we enabled a Vietnamese business district on the west side of town. Also, starting those days, I actually elected or appointed the first, if not some of the first Vietnamese commissioners ever. Nam Tham, also Nan Hoa, and also Ken Nguyen, who's our planning commissioner now. And one of my youth commissioners right now is Koa Lee. Was also very proud that in the state assembly, I did a lot of work with them, everything from recognizing the flag to all the fallen soldiers on both sides with the fall of Saigon. We took on large corporations in terms of how they represented the Vietnamese flag in California and across the country with many successes. And when we had this issue of the complaint, we looked up the California Voting Rights Act, and I verified with the facts that we got and the research that we did that there was disenfranchisement, and it was hard getting the 4 votes and getting this done, but I was committed from day one to doing that, and I'm very proud that we now have Ward 1. Many of us fought very hard for that. Thank you.
Thank you, Jose. Vicente, can you answer that question?
Sure, thanks for that, Norberto. Yeah, I was on the council when we did try to pass district elections before the actual lawsuit showing that Santa Ana was in violation of the California Voting Rights Act. Unfortunately, it didn't go well. We saw that at-large elections weren't working well, and we know that district elections give better representation to folks, but also are able to be a tool to prevent special interests from dominating election cycles also. For the Vietnamese specifically, I've worked with them on many of their temples because I think we have more Vietnamese Buddhist temples in the city than any other place in the county. We know we have close to 35,000 residents that are Vietnamese American. Santa Ana was actually the home to Little Saigon. So when the refugees came in 1976, their landing place was in Santa Ana, and you can almost pinpoint the intersection, which was Sullivan and First. And so, we do have a rich history. I did many resolutions with the community recognizing the Vietnamese flag here in Santa Ana, as well as other resolutions that made sure that it captured the spirit of what they were doing. And most recently, I worked with Viet Rise on making sure that Tin Nguyen, who was being held by Homeland Security, was released. And so that was a real important effort for all of us because we know that he had served his time, was pardoned by the governor, and on his way out, he was handed over to ICE and was in the process of being deported. So it was a collaborative effort. Thank you.
Thank you, Vicente. Mark, can you give us your perspective on that?
Mark, you will need to unmute. Mark, please unmute using *6 or making sure your phone isn't on mute.
Yes, I do have a well knowledge about the Vietnam War and the after effects and how sociological, how the Vietnamese people think about that. I recall going into little Saigon area asking for signatures, and most people, no offense to them, but most of these individuals, they seem to care about what was happening in Santa Ana or the politics of Santa Ana. I could understand that because you had a lot of older refugees, and they were so used to the corruption of South Vietnam, and I guess the attitude kind of played over there, coming here too as well. And a lot of economic benefits, remember, did come from Santa Ana. They were offered them because they were refugee status act. A lot of them were offered benefits from the federal government and loans and all that. It did come from Santa Ana. A lot of it came to Santa Ana because we had Camp Pendleton and El Toro here, so we had that Marine connection. And opposed to this thing about the flag issue, I hate to tell people, I'll give them a historical lesson. The country of South Vietnam doesn't exist. That flag they fly is a bit irrelevant. I think a lot of issues with that flag is a bit ridiculous. They need to realize that Vietnam is Vietnam right now, and that Vietnam is open to a lot of Western ideas and economics and all that. I think all citizens, whether Vietnamese, Latin Americans, Mexican Americans, I think we should be all involved in one as Americans and all get involved in the whole election process in Santa Ana or democratic process in Santa Ana. I'm just sick and tired of saying this group, that group, that group. And like I said, a lot of these things, it's historical things from the old days of South Vietnam where corruption was the norm, and a lot of but that attitude over here as well. Thank you.
Thank you,
Yes.
Mark. We will need you to mute when you're not speaking. Thank you.
Thanks again, Mark. George, can you give us your take?
Absolutely, I'm happy to. As part of the things I've done around Santa Ana for the past 25 years, one of them is filming special events. And I've been to many of the Vietnamese events, as well as other Asian events, filming them and promoting them with beauty pageants and things like that. Right now, I'm working with a couple of the Asian restaurant owners downtown that had gentrification against them because Santa Ana business owners down there didn't want Asians there. So I'm trying to fight the gentrification that's happening on them on a racial basis. And I think that's probably one of the most important issues for the Vietnamese or the Asians community that we have. We have more than Vietnamese here, is that they are attempting to be gentrified. And part of it was with the district boundaries that were talked about, that were dropped earlier, trying to be pushed out. And we all have to fight against that. I think bringing them into the community, having them part of the community, supporting them is probably the greatest thing anybody can do off of the council. On the council as mayor, obviously I can do much more than just videoing and trying to give them support in areas where council members aren't supporting them. That's what I've done over the past 10, 15 years.
Thank you, George. Claudia, can you give us your perspectives?
Yes, absolutely. The Vietnamese community has always been dear to my heart. I grew up in the west end of the city. I went to Santiago High School, and way back when, it used to be highly populated by Vietnamese families. And in fact, I remember the first time I ever tried pho was when I was 14, back in 1984, 85. And to this day, I very much enjoy Vietnamese food. I, in fact, have been to Vietnam with a dear friend of mine, a Vietnam vet, Max Madrid, and to appreciate their culture. But as far as our local city here and what we've done for the Vietnamese community, I was amongst the first to not only participate in their Tet Parade when hardly anyone showed up, right, but supported it even when it became controversial. I was there when, in fact, we appointed commissioners. I was part of that support. I was there when we gave them the little Saigon sign. I was there when they worked on their temples. And I have been there through my college board trustee years, if you will, because a third of my district is Vietnamese. I very much reach out to the community. We work with all the students. We recently passed a resolution that was anti-hate when people started referring to the coronavirus as a Chinese virus. And in fact, I have been endorsed by the I-Chinese Pact, which includes Indochina, which includes Vietnam. So I'm supportive of the community. The community has been very supportive of me, and I hold it close to my heart and will continue to work with them as mayor.
Thank you, Claudia. So let's move on to our next question about housing or homelessness and affordable housing. So here's the next question. Housing continues to be unaffordable in the city, and Project Room Key is ending. Residents have and will be displaced. What is your plan to increase affordable housing opportunities for low-income tenants and unhoused residents in the city? Vicente, let's start with you this time.
Thank you for that question, Norberto. That's a real simple one that you're giving us. You know, housing was actually, you know, homelessness and the unsheltered was polling as the #1 issue before COVID-19 hit. So we know that we've been dealing with it, not just as a city, but as a region and as a country. So we specifically had problems with the housing problem before COVID hit. Now we know it's even more acute. We know that people are losing their homes. We know that rents are increasing at a rate where people can't keep up with them, right? So we have 50% of our residents are tenants and renters, and 80% of our folks earn less than $53,000. So we see that we're on a bad trajectory where folks who earn a lot less have to double and triple up, and it leads to problems like overcrowding. It leads to problems like public health consequences that we're seeing in this pandemic. I think what we have to do is revisit the Affordable Housing Ordinance, the Housing Opportunity Ordinance, and make it as robust as it was. It was recently diluted. I think there's ways we can benefit the residents of Santa Ana and tailor it for their needs. We're in the process of building a permanent homeless shelter for our unhoused, where we could do wraparound services. That's something that we need to do to comply with the Jones case that will allow us to help and have folks that are in the public right of way and who are camping to enforce our anti-camping ordinance. So those are just some ways that we would deal with it. Thank you.
Thank you, Vicente. Claudia, what's your pick?
Well, I'll start on you, Norberto. It was a royal travesty to watch the WHO get defunded, because it wasn't just about asking developers or actually letting them go, if you will, from having to pay that fee. But if you look closely, that night, the WHO got defunded. It wasn't just about giving them a break. All the monies that had been raised, 13 million of it went down to like 6, and nobody spoke up about it. People voted against it, but nobody spoke up about the defunding. We have a major issue countywide. We have a major issue statewide, but I think we all need to be part of the solution. Santa Ana has taken a big responsibility in getting it done. Of course, we want to house for families. Of course, we want to help families that cannot afford their rent. But I think we need to hold other cities accountable and start working in making sure that people see it as the big picture, if you will, because it impacts all of us. And it goes hand in hand with the homelessness. So to the extent that we could not only continue to do affordable housing in the right places, if you will, and I'm not saying put them all in one place because we don't want to create a second class, I will be supportive of that, but I do think we need to hold other cities accountable.
Thank you, Claudia. Let's see here. George, what's your sense?
As I said earlier, that I've driven around 2,100 miles in the past few weeks around Santa Ana, and when I pull into a parking lot in the early morning at 4 a.m., I'll see 4 or 5 people sleeping up next to a building or in the bushes. It's devastating to see this. Santa Ana has a problem. Santa Ana, over the past 3 censuses that I've been here through for 30 years, has welcomed many people here to get the census numbers up. I think we need to change the concept of Santa Ana from a densely populated city to a business-based city. For the low-income housing people, I would rather increase their income by bringing an Amazon distribution center here and other business, so they're not worried about the cost of their rent. They have a higher income. I think Santa Ana has looked at it wrong for 25 years. It's busy trying to give a fish every day to people instead of teaching them how to fish and how to have a better life. I would do everything I could as mayor to help these people and bring jobs to Santa Ana so they can have a better life and a better foothold. Trying to force other cities to take something they don't want. We can spend millions of dollars on lawsuits, and they'll spend millions of dollars on lawsuits to keep them away, and it's a fruitless effort. But if we have a city based on jobs, people will work here. Amazon's offering $22 an hour with medical starting out. That's a lot better than a restaurant job or something like that for low-income people. And we, as a mayor, as a city, we can require Amazon to hire so many of the people from Santa Ana as a prerequisite to coming here. So I would look at increasing the quality of life. Thank you.
Thank you, George. Mark, what's your sense?
I got it.
Yes, sir. Yes, I happen to be looking at an LA Times article from 1995, how Santa Ana tried to address this issue to limit the occupancy limits in the housing. I see this was shut down by Lori Spix, SPIX. The issue is, one, if I were elected mayor, one, I would have a committee form, a study group to find out who exactly needs housing. Will it be veterans, homeless, displaced people because of losing jobs? We just can't put money away to say homeless is the issue. Because right now we have a lot of apartments to be built, high-rise apartments to be built right off First Street. I totally support that because the image of Santa Ana is going to change completely with our Fourth Street revitalization. I support that. If business is business, it's a capitalist society. The renters have all the right to charge whatever rent we have. And third of all, I think some of the problems that we face now, I wasn't going to say this, but 2 current council members and 1 former councilwoman are responsible for the homeless issue we have. That was happening years ago before it exacerbated right there at City Hall by the library. They kept coming in, And Kurt and Pat's for councilor did not do a darn thing about it. Now they kind of put the blame on everybody else. I find it highly irreprehensible to hear that. They should take blame for what they did and be responsible for that. Third, on the homeless issue, I'm going to be real kinetic about this. I'm going to use everything at my legal means disposable to find out who exactly are these homeless from. If they're homeless from Santa Ana, we'll take care of them here. We'll provide for the right services, mental health, drug addiction, whatever else. Then we'll find out who doesn't live in Santa Ana, find out the home of origin, and direct it back to the home of origin. It sounds like it has to be sort of a tough love. Thank you.
Thank you, Mark. Jose, what's your perspective? Jose. Is Jose here? Do we maybe lose him? No, you're there. Jose, can you give us your perspective on that? Maybe you're muted still.
Oh, yes, sorry, it was muted.
Okay.
Yes, I'm very proud of all the affordable housing that we have underway. We're one of very few cities really in Southern California and the state that have been meeting our affordable housing obligations. We literally have about 1,500 affordable housing units that are now done or under construction that we've done just in the past few years. That's something to be proud of. There's not other cities, again, that are doing that. So I applaud everybody on the city council and the community and the developers that have helped make that happen. We also need to do more rehabilitation. The thing I'd like about rehabbing existing substandard units is that we could really cater that more to Santa Ana residents. When we do just regular affordable housing projects, we can't prohibit folks from outside of the town to get those slots in there. So I want to focus more on Santa Ana residents and many apartments that are right now substandard. We also have a rental assistance program that we've been growing and that I helped take the lead on last year. And now with COVID dollars in particular, we have a $10 million rental assistance fund to help folks that are suffering hardships from COVID. I checked about a week ago and we had only given out about $600,000 of that 10 million. So I would encourage folks to keep applying for that. The address is santa-ana.org/cares, CARES. There's information in English, Spanish, and Vietnamese for that. And that's something that I'm really proud of. And again, the focus now should be on Santa Ana residents who are the ones suffering. Thank you.
Thanks again. So let's move on to the next question. Before I move on to the next question, I want to make sure to remind everybody that former Councilwoman Cecilia Iglesias was invited to the forum, but she had a scheduling conflict. So unfortunately, she wasn't able to make it with us tonight. I should have said that in the beginning of the session, so her supporters or people who are curious about her take on some of these issues would have known that. So I certainly apologize and make sure to mention that again. Let's move on to access to open space and public lands, a big issue in Santa Ana this year. Given the housing affordability crisis and the dire lack of open space in Santa Ana, a group of residents has been advocating for about 2 years now that the Willowick Golf Course be used strictly for open green space and very affordable housing on the site. How would you support those residents that are asking for this? And we'll start with Mark.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. On that Willowick Golf area, I think it'd be great for open space area, a huge dynamic park, sort of like a la mini Central Park. For low-income housing, I mean, if I walk that area, and I challenge anybody at this meeting to come walk through that area at night, it can be a bit sketchy and dangerous. It's not a good area to be building low-income housing. Then eventually the quality of life just goes to hell. Sorry about that. And that's the reality of that. That whole area needs a dynamic change. I haven't seen the long-term plans of that area, but the trolley's supposed to be running that way. So I would assume there's something out there that change that whole area completely, which I approve of. But I'm not sure what type of apartments, what type of housing would be offered. Because I see what low-income housing does. I live here on East Water Street. I see what low-income apartments do. And I'll invite anybody to walk to my area, especially at night where you see the real nitty-gritty of it. It just ruins the quality of life. But that whole Willowick area, I would probably a big open space, maybe a whole new gym, ballpark, an indoor gym with a swimming pool, the whole 9 yards. But housing, low-income housing, no, because that area, until I find out more about it, that whole area has to be redeveloped. has to be redeveloped. It's not exactly family kind right now. There's a lot of things. It's a high crime area, and until I further know more about that, I'll have to wait and decide on that right now because you can't say yes or no about that because, like I said, the colonies go to there, so there might be some other plans I don't know about that changes that area completely, and I do approve of that. They don't set aside some areas for people in Santa Ana. They can afford to offer new opportunities to have housing in their houses. Thank you.
Thank you, Mark. Claudia.
Thank you, Norberto. I would love nothing more than to have a central park like in Santa Ana, right? We have so many different places where we need open space. But I will tell you, I went to a concert, I would say 2 to 3 years ago at the Great Park. And it was the first time I visited the Great Park, and I kept looking for the open space. It was housing and more housing and then more housing and then more housing. So to the extent that we're talking about over 100 acres out there, right? I would be open to a mixed use, but absolutely open space to the extent that you could appreciate it as open space, not, piecemeal it here and there. It's a lot of acreage. I don't think we could afford to have that luxury. I would love nothing more than to do that, but to the extent that there's money involved, there's proprietary interest involved, there's portable housing restrictions that we have on there. I think it behooves us to come to the table and try to reach a compromise as to how to best make that space work.
Thank you, Claudia. Jose.
Yes, I've been out to that community to talk to them about Willowwick and plans there. So I'm glad that I did the firsthand research. And, I think I've learned that, I think the question is, how can we maximize open space, but still do some nice things for the community? They're very interested in sporting activities, support local efforts and groups, not necessarily anything big external, but just for our local families there. They're interested in more entertainment spaces. They are interested in jobs. They are interested in making sure that as one of the early endpoints of our light rail project, that there's going to be some activity there so that there could be people getting on and off the trains, and it's an opportunity to get people, places without having a car, so that's positive. I also think it's an opportunity to improve the Santa Anita, as was just mentioned by one of our other candidates. There are areas that need improvement. There are areas that are unsafe, and through some investment, we can make those communities better. I'm committed to making sure that we just have a very nice project. Someone mentioned a very visionary idea, maybe something like the botanical gardens in Huntington that many of us have seen. It's green, it's open, but does attract a little bit of opportunity. And finally, I want to make sure that whatever we do there doesn't displace the residents there. I want to keep them there. I want to make sure that they have a good experience with whatever we end up doing there.
Thank you, Jose. George, can you give us your take? George?
I just started back up, so I missed part of what was going on. I apologize if I didn't hear you. Norberto, I hate to correct the host on this, but if I remember correctly, I think I was filming city council meetings when they weren't being filmed, the second meeting 15, 18 years ago, and Willowwick was an issue then. So I think it's gone back a little bit further than just 2 years. On that note, I think with COVID and trying to recover from that and what it's done to the city and businesses, I would be more apt to work with Garden Grove because there's some issues with the Willowwick and Garden Grove also, as I understand it, to put in, to get some open space. Absolutely, kids need that. But kids are going to need jobs now. We need to get business in here and jobs for these kids and youth and young adults. I think that would be more apt, better than low-income housing. And as Mark said, there is an issue over there, and putting in more low-income housing may manifest that and make it worse. So I think jobs and open space so they can have, the younger kids can have a place to go, and the older kids can have an income and some future in life that we could make out of that if we could come to an agreement with Garden Grove. But I think this does go back about 15 or 20 years.
Fair enough. Thank you, George. Vicente, can you give us your perspective on that?
Yeah, thanks. And I think George is right. This issue goes way back, and I know both city councils have tried to tackle this. And what's difficult is for many that don't know Willowick, it's owned by Garden Grove, but it's within the city of Santa Ana boundaries. And so getting both city councils and policymakers on both sides to agree has been really challenging. I think one of the things that we don't want to do is hand it over to a private developer and get the highest and best use, because right now, what is the highest and best use for any land is housing. And I think, as was said, look, what we need right now, because Santana is a park poor community, is enough open space that's going to have a positive ratio to how many youth we have, because we're one of the youngest communities in the country. Our median age is 27, 28 years old. And really speak to the neighborhoods, speak to Santa Anita and those neighborhoods around Willowick to see what do they want to see. And there's a reason why this land is subject to the Surplus Land Act, which requires us to make sure we study having open space there, having affordable housing there, and sure, we can have amenities that can help make this project pencil out. But one of the things I know was creative was maybe bringing a Greek theater, something that is an open air place where we can have performing arts, music. The cost is really low, but it's something that all of us could enjoy. And that is truly what, I would like to see, a true public-private partnership that will allow all of our residents, especially those that surround it, enjoy. Thank you.
Thank you, Vicente. So let's move on to our next question now, around the issue of indigenous lands, land negotiations, reparation efforts has been a big, a rising topic. Recently, we saw the governor take action on this. There are some questions about land ownership use issues in Santa Ana with indigenous tribes, historic indigenous peoples and communities, and how those issues have been handled. Are you open to having those kinds of conversations with members of the indigenous community? What measures would you support that might pay reparations to indigenous people living in the city or align with their desires for land back? And we'll start with Jose.
Thank you. We from time to time hear a little bit about that, but probably something that I would want to know more about. It seems like you know quite a bit about that, Norvetto. The only thing I could say is that as we're doing work with the light rail project and even a little car wash over on South Tustin, a lot of it too also just involves surveying to see where there might be those kinds of histories. It means working with those Native American tribe leaders to figure out how to do that. And again, it first starts just by surveying and looking at history and seeing how we can acknowledge the past and work with them to see, for today and moving forward, what we might be able to do. There are opportunities such as, for example, one of the stations for light rail may have had some of those histories. And so maybe that ought to be part of that light rail station and telling the story there, telling it alongside with the voices of our Native American Indian leaders. So that's the kind of work that I would do, Norberto, but there hasn't really been a big topic of conversation, at least at the city council level, over the past 3 years. So I'll just leave it at that for now.
Thank you, Jose. George, what's your sense?
This is very interesting because through my whole life, I've been upset with calling people American Indians or terms like that. I always looked at as pre-American natives. They were here before America was named America. I have no issue with working with people finding a general acceptance and a general use. Paying a reparation for something 200, 300, 400 years ago, I have a little issue with, because who would we pay it to? And how would we divvy that up, and where would the money come from, especially in the pandemic? I did interview and film the gentleman that wrote the book, Don Benito Wilson, about the 22 original families that founded the Los Angeles area. So I have a pretty good history of who was here and what was going on. I don't have a problem working with people and taking their dreams and blending them into the needs of the city. No issue. I would admire that, and putting up some statues and things like that to admire the founders that were here first. Reparations, I would have an issue with, but it's something that I've heard very little about, quite honestly. So I'd have to work with people to find out what the desires are and then go from there. That's the best I could do at this time.
Thank you, George. Claudia, what's your sense?
Thank you, Norberto. I think it's clear that we need to do more research because it seems to be a new topic for a lot of us, to the extent that, of course, people want to have the conversation. Absolutely. If there has been injustice having to do with the land, because as you know, there's injustices in a lot of different issues and topics, I would be open to having the conversation and, in fact, educate our community as to our past. You could see by the candidates giving you an answer that, in fact, we need more education as it relates to that particular issue. However, all the legal can of worms would open by me giving a guarantee of some type of reparations. I know better than to put out a promise I can't keep if I don't know the legal repercussions. So absolutely, we would need to get legal opinions, not necessarily to fight that, but actually to see what rights could be repaired and how.
Thank you, Claudia. Vicente.
Yeah, thanks, Norberto, for that question. And I think it will be a more prevalent question to many communities, because we're not the only ones that have remnants nor discussion and debates about land rights from indigenous people that obviously were here long before this was the U.S. and long before this was Mexico. Because we are on some very old soil and territory. So I know that there is evidence and there's been findings that the Juaneño Indians had land rights to much of what is Santa Ana now. So to the extent that the discussions we have to have now are important, I think other communities are also looking at that. Again, what reparations look like, whether it's, proprietary interests going forward or some sort of reparations for those land rights before that could be demonstrated. Again, I think one thing that we can't do is say, we don't know enough about it, let's just disregard it. Indigenous people have rights to territory that was here and was held before we came. So a lot of what we don't understand is because it's convenient to not ask those questions. It's convenient to not have those discussions. And I think, more often than not, we're going to see that coming forward. And it's something that I look forward to us looking into more. Thank you.
Thank you, Vicente. Mark, what's your sense on that?
If I were to start this process of looking at my lineage, I'd probably do some reparations too for my dad's side. But I'm not going to be reparations. I'm not going to be pressured to this because of political correctness, or it seems like that's a new trend now. Our country has a rich history of good and bad, bad and evil, good times, bad times. But we're still a great country. Like I said, I'm not too familiar with this issue about the indigenous people. I know a lot about the Black community, because back in the day we did have a huge Black community. But I think this goes along with this park I suggest too. I think it's something that maybe if we do develop this great park, we have like a day for everybody, for each culture, like a big culture day, like they do down at San Diego over there at the big park down there. They do a lot of cultural stuff down there. I think that's how we embrace it. I don't want to look at this as, we feel we owe something to somebody. If I have the case, nothing will get done in this country, because there's always been someone in this country who's always been hurt or wrong. But that's just the nature of our history. We learn from it, we remember it, and we go on from there. Because even in the future now, we're still have good and bad things happening to people. This is something I think we should some of the local college students that do start studying about this, because this is something about this local indigenous I don't know too much about. I've been fortunate to work with local indigenous people overseas, but I think this is something we should look into and maybe have a day for it, a parade for it, something to celebrate it. But reparations, heck, we can't even afford to take care of our homeless now. Where is the magical money going to come from? Thank you.
Thank you, Mark. Okay, move on to the next question. Has to do with immigration. Santa Ana has a large population of undocumented immigrants and DACA recipients. The current federal administration has enacted policies that do separate families and are oftentimes instilling fear in the community. What would you do to keep families together and residents safe from ICE raids? Vicente, what's your sense?
Thank you for that, Norberto. I've dedicated a lot of the work that I've done on the city council to representing immigrant families. And obviously we're a very Latino city. 80% of us are Latino, 50% of us are foreign born, and a very large portion of the immigrant community is undocumented. And so, the way I see it is I don't see a documented or an undocumented immigrant differently. I see them as our neighbors. I see them as residents here in the city. And so I've tried to work on policies that will make sure that all our residents feel protected, which is why I was extremely supportive of the sanctuary city ordinance that the city now enjoys. It makes sure that those families are protected. Their sensitive information isn't shared with Homeland Security or ICE. I've also advocated and been one of the strong authors of the Deportation Defense Fund, which now is on its 3rd year. And it allows for those who are undocumented, when they are being separated from their families or in the process of being deported, to have counsel next to them. And we've seen that those who go in without attorneys to these deportation hearings have a 0% chance of success. And those that go in with attorneys have about a 60 to 70% chance of telling their story and being able to prevail. The other policies that we've seen are important is to make sure that we include our undocumented community in city functions. For me, I was the first one to appoint an undocumented resident here in Santa Ana as a commissioner. And, I'm proud to have been the first one to do that. And those are just a few things. Thank you.
Time's up. Yeah. Let's see here. Mark, what's your sense?
Yes. Yeah, I've been reading this. When I answer these questions come not like from the old days where just knee-jerk reactions based on emotion. I try to be real analytical about them, real deep thinking about them to get a fair conclusion. And I've been reading this great article from Rand called "Either Deportation or Amnesty." I mean, like I said, we still have the rule of law in the books. You always have two sides to this issue: the humanitarian side and the rule of law. Both have valid points, but we have both valid points of why this immigration issue is important. But like I said, we still have the rule of law here. And I find it very disingenuous and naive to a certain candidate to say that he should be appointing non-documented individuals. I think that's wrong. That's why I thought to myself, you know what? I hear a lot of the rhetoric, same here from state candidates, do this and that, but come to my area. I showed for the last 20 years with the same neighborhoods, poor. Nothing's changed. That's why I'm starting my organization called the Mexican American Advisory Group. I want to be more kinetic, go out to the residents. Maybe not just give them citizenship, but do like the process where you start the citizenship process. Find out who's ready to become a citizen. Teach the classes, teach the civic classes. Do our own in-house thing, and I would appoint people to a certain council, ad hoc members too. Well, get them involved. But let's start our own thing in Santa Ana, in-house thing. Get these people ready to become citizens. Quit pandering them and leave them out to the cold, this or that. Because like I said, I invite any of these candidates come to my neighborhood and walk. You have some of these immigrants, unfortunately adopted, they don't want to hit the same old rhetoric. They want change. Hey, tell me how it can belong to citizenship. And that's why for the Mexican American Advisory Group, I'm going to go out there and teach their civic classes, the rule of law, get involved, not be afraid of the police, get themselves ready for that, or create our own policy where we have our own citizenship program. Because obviously the United States does not do nothing. Thank you.
Thank you. Claudia, what's your stance?
Thank you, Roberto. I will tell you, I moved to this country from Mexico when I was 10 years old and didn't speak a word of English. I am very close to the issue because I lived it. And I must tell you that, in fact, this week, October 19th, it's Undocumented Student Week. We have almost 5,000 students amongst our campuses between Santa Ana College and Santiago Canyon College that are DACA kids. And absolutely, our board has been so supportive of them, so much so that we have passed resolutions indicating to ICE that they are not welcome on our campuses. To the extent that, yes, if they have a search warrant, we must follow the law, but can they just walk in and start looking for students? Absolutely not. We have also passed a word around as to what their rights are, not just on our campuses, but actually going door to door. We have worked with Naleo, where they have the little pamphlets that tell you what their rights are, and they don't necessarily have to open the door, and whether, in fact, they have to talk to them at all. So to the extent that our community is getting harassed and oppressed by the practices, I think absolutely, and we have, that needs to be stopped, and we have stopped it. People talk about how the city of Santa Ana became a sanctuary city just recently. I was no longer on the council when that happened, but I must tell you, we had already, and we're well on our way to engaging on those practices. When Paul Walters was chief, he did not engage with ICE. We did not have our police department talk to ICE or work with ICE. So we were already doing that before we labeled the city that. So to that extent, that was already happening. Also, I was supportive of undocumented people getting their licenses when other elected officials weren't, and in fact voted against it when they were in the assembly. That undocumented community is dear to my heart, and I think it's something we absolutely need to address with the new presidency and at the local level to the extent that we can do damage control. Thank you.
Thank you, Claudia. I appreciate it. We'll move on to next to George, and just remind everybody again, and I do this myself, to slow down. Even though it's a short time, it'll make it challenging on the translators. It's not anybody in particular. I just will remind everybody little by little, because again, I'll be the first one that will go very fast. And again, it's hard with the timelines. George, what's your sense?
This bothers me with all of the candidates here, and this is a big issue because I raised my right hand and I took an oath to uphold the laws of the United States and the laws of the state of California. I'm not sure what laws people are asking me to break after I took that oath to do this. I don't want to protect pedophiles. I don't want to protect wife beaters. I don't want to protect child abusers. So what law do I not break to keep these people safe so they can keep abusing the children and the wives? So I have a problem with this. I would have to look and work with people to make sure, or work with ICE to make sure only people that are criminally minded, have already been accused of assault with a deadly weapon or murder. I don't want that in Santa Ana. I don't want child abusers. I want kids to be able to walk to school safely without having to worry about pedophiles. And no, I'm not saying all immigrants are that way, but we're looking at a general question that I took an oath to uphold the laws of the United States and the state of California. And now we're asking the question, well, will you break this law? Well, maybe somebody wants me to break the speeding law or the drinking law. I would rather work with and get the bad people out of Santa Ana and keep the good people there, helping promote good growth and good quality of life in Santa Ana. So looking at it that way, that's what I would be doing.
Thank you, George. Jose, can you give us your perspective? You're on mute. I'll restart your time.
Sanctuary city policy in Santa Ana for a long time, as was mentioned. It's worked well. It's going to continue to work well. We're not, telling people they can commit crimes and we're not going to do anything. I think what we're just saying is if the federal government wants to do their own enforcement on certain issues, it's up to them. We should keep focusing just our local public safety services on local matters. We also, on the legal defense fund that was mentioned, it's been a good program. We've been improving it. For me, very important to that, and we did get these things resolved. I wanted it to focus not just on any immigrants with problems throughout the country. I said, look, we should focus those resources on making sure the residents are from Santa Ana, number one, because at first, some of these groups behind it, as well as some of my colleagues didn't want to just limit it to benefit Santa Ana residents, as well as with the benefit towards dreamers, as well as veterans. So we've done that. We also need to keep fighting for comprehensive immigration reform at the federal level. That's the number one important thing that we can do. And hopefully we'll be electing, Joe Biden and Kamala Harris. And I know Kamala Harris will work very closely with me and other leaders in California to do better by that. I was also really proud of serving on the California Student Aid Commission, where we created and grew the Dreamer Scholarship, the California Dream Act Scholarship that has benefited thousands of Santa Ana college students to the tune of literally millions of dollars. So I'm very proud of that work as well, making sure that dreamers have the resources to go to college and to complete their college. Thank you.
Thank you, Jose. Let's see here. So let's go on to, we have two questions left as part of the debate or as part of the forum. So let's move on our next one, which is on the budget and safety, public safety. The Black Lives Matter movement has energized Santa Ana youth and adult residents to be increasingly vocal about their disappointment in the proposed budget for the 2020-2021 fiscal year. Residents in many cases believe that the Police Officers Association has an undue influence over the city budget, and in some ways forces the hands of many of the public officials. Residents have called upon a need to invest in youth and not necessarily in more police officers. How would you act upon those constituents expressed concerns about POA influence on budgetary matters? And which one of your priorities would you redirect funding to? Claudia, let's start with you.
Thank you, Roberto. First and foremost, I don't think any particular group, whether it be the POA or whether it be a developer, should have that much influence on a council member or mayor for that matter. I think when you act in the role of an elected official and you were chosen by the community to represent them, that should be your number one priority. What's in the best interest of our city? to the extent that, yes, we do need a lot of services for our youth, and there's a lot of things that are lacking in our city. We all know that. We have a lot of challenges. But one of the challenges is, in fact, public safety. I served on the Public Safety Committee as chair for 9 of the 12 years that I served, and by the time I was leaving, we were ranked the 4th safest city our size. And the minute I left, within 3 weeks, they walked out Chief Walters, and they started defunding the police, and we have statistics that show that crime went up. That's not fair to our community either. So we have to reach a balance. We cannot defund the police. We cannot possibly stand behind in line to cities like Garden Grove and Anaheim by not funding positions. We have a need to address, and safety is my #1 priority. So I will not defund the police. I will make sure that our police department is well staffed. I will not be influenced by one particular group in any way, shape, or form. And absolutely, I will look to see how we could help our youth, because we do need to address that issue as well. I do a lot of prevention work, a lot of enforcement work, but we got to reach a balance. We cannot just, throw the baby out with the bathwater.
Thank you, Claudia. Jose, what's your sense?
Yes, a few things. First of all, every city commits, very equal share to what we do for public safety. That includes police and fire and other important matters. I would also let you know that, based on polling that I've done in my own outreach in the community, I would tell you that well over 60% support our police department in funding it. They also support continuing to reduce 911 response time, which our council, including with my leadership, has done. It used to be about 8 minutes for response on an emergency 911 call. Now we have that back down to 6.5 minutes, and we need to keep doing better. We also did some very good reforms. We now have all our officers wearing body-worn cameras. I think that's significant. We also have a youth fund with $7 million. There's no other city in Orange County that has something like that. We also tripled, including with my leadership, the amount of money that we put for youth services in our community development block grant program. I'm very proud of that. And then finally, many talked about, making, reforms that are really just better for delivery of services. And in saying that, we did it. We moved the animal control department unit to code enforcement and planning. We also moved the crosswalk program to public works, where it makes sense, and so residents will be receiving the same services. Can we definitely do more for community safety overall? Yes, we can. I think also that includes COVID and making sure that small businesses can receive these grants, rental assistance, and just making our community safe and healthy overall. Thank you.
Thank you again. George, what's your sense?
Actually, I got a little lost on listening. If you would repeat the question so I can get specifically what you're asking for, I'd appreciate it.
Absolutely. The question is frankly about the budget and public safety, noting that the Black Lives Matter movement energized many Santana youth and adults to be very vocal about the proposed budget for next year, especially when it comes to public safety. There's a sense amongst many residents that your police officers association exerts an undue influence upon your public budget. And the question from many of these residents, and again, these questions are all come from residents, have called upon a question about investing more in youth as opposed to more police officers. The question to the candidates is, how would you act upon your constituents' expressed concerns about POA influence over budgetary matters, and which of your priorities would you redirect funding to?
Okay, thank you. This is interesting. I changed my background so you can see my website. This is actually covered on the website in quite a bit of detail. One of the big problems we have right now, any budget or any forecast of a budget is purely fictional for next year because of COVID, business shut down. So I think instead of looking at funding going to the PLA or the police department, what I had outlined on the webpage is how to shift funding within the police department and get response times down with eyes on the scene to under 3 minutes, independent of traffic, or whether with an emergency drone release for 911 calls. That'll save millions of dollars on the helicopter, faster response, and the video can be piped to any police car, OCFA, emergency, or community emergency response team in case there's an earthquake. So that would be a big budget saving there. I interviewed the POA before I was called in for an interview to see if they were willing to make changes. One of the recommendations that I got from the PD was to put offices in each one of the wards, a small outreach office so people have a close place to go to. I think we can do all that with budget savings, pending that we have some type of budget next year. With the COVID and we don't know when things are going to be lifted, I think that's really a sketchy issue right now until we know what second quarter is going to do. It's kind of serious with how close to bankruptcy. I think we've been given over $50 million to stay afloat, so we have to work with that. Thank you.
Thank you, George. Mark. Are you there, Mark?
Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Yes, sir. About the budget-wise, I'd like to remind individuals the reason why I want to form a full-time mayor and council, because as you know, as I said before, the mayor is purely ceremonial and the council a part-time position. We have a full-time city manager to pay the $9,650 salary, and he does, I believe, overinflated staff handling our budget. That's why I want to make the mayor a full-time job, so we have more direct action in our budget making. If I'm elected, I can only advise and research. That's why we have a full-time city manager deal with the budget. But if we switch to full-time mayor, then we can have more input, especially where we have city managers that doesn't even understand that. Black Lives Matter, I commend those individuals still sustaining the effort, especially on the SunPower website. These guys are really getting the truth out there for once. And the third question about the police, I feel there's a huge disconnect right now. The waiting times are outrageous. The attitude between the rank and file toward the citizens, it's not what it used to be as a kid. I still respect these guys, but there needs a dynamic change in leadership. And that recalls to the Police Officers Association. I think Mr. Solorio, Mr. Norvetto can explain why they should explain why they voted for that recall. Because anything they say now is, I think they're basically lying about the whole issue. They were party to this, and I find that whole incident despicable and disgusting on how a democratic society should work. Thank you.
Thank you. Vicente, can you give us your perspective?
Yeah, thanks, Norvetto. So, you know, another complicated question. But this isn't a binary decision. In other words, you can't, you can say you're supportive of law enforcement and still want to improve the trust that's lacking in the community. And the reason why we saw a lot of people, marching all over the country, not just here in Santa Ana, was because there is a basic lack of trust and sort of a disparity between law enforcement and the public, especially communities of color like ours. For me, I am not seeking the endorsement of the Police Officers Association, nor am I receiving any money from them. But I do think that, just so everybody knows, because I know there's misrepresentations out there, I don't believe in defunding law enforcement either. I do believe we should be more intelligent and thoughtful about re-examining how we allocate resources. What I saw in our budget is that a disproportionate amount was going to public safety, and very little was going to youth investment, libraries, infrastructure. And one of the things I would do is that, we have commissions, city commissions that are dedicated to arts and culture, historic resources, but yet we spend 40 to 45% of our unrestricted general fund on law enforcement. We don't have a public safety commission. That is something for the residents and the community to participate on, just to ensure that there's accountability, that there's oversight, that they're able to dictate how their public funds and resources are used and whether or not they're done in an intelligent way. I think our officers have been asked to do many things that they shouldn't, like welfare checks, dealing with the mentally ill and the unsheltered. Thank you.
Thank you, Vicente. Okay, let's move to our last question for the session, and has to do with coronavirus, COVID-19 and economic recovery. Low-income residents in Santa Ana have been disproportionately impacted by COVID-19. County and city efforts to address the pandemic so far have focused largely on free testing sites and financial assistance. However, the conditions that residents in these areas were living in prior to the pandemic in many ways contributed to the high case rate, including lack of access to affordable housing and overcrowding. With the economic impact that COVID-19 is having locally and the upcoming economic recession that's likely connected to it, what plans do you have to support low-income residents who will be the most impacted? And would you promote alternative economies such as local cooperatives or artisan or culinary markets in collaboration with Santa Ana residents? Mark, let's start with you.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. This is one of the things, this comes from a very thought out response. I think sanctuary city is a blowback for what's happening in COVID-19. Because even though we have sanctuary city, and all it does is invite more people to come here, and we just don't have the resources, sir. We don't have the resources. It'd be great if we could, but we do not. I encourage any council member, current or past, if they like to work in this field, join a nonprofit or humanitarian organization. But to declare ourselves a sanctuary, invite more people, you see the blowback result of this. High density areas, especially where I live out here, and there's some high rates. You might have testing, but all the testing doing is proving that they're positive for this issue. That's a blowback of sanctuary city. We cannot have people coming here because all they live in high density, low income areas. I think the council members need to go out to their districts, put on their PPE. Go out to the wards, put on their PPE, and start getting the ward members start doing the right things. Because they the count's 11,100. It's like almost rising every day substantially. And what of the mayor? I see the mayor do. They put up street signs out there and wear masks, but the council members need to get out there and start telling these people to get down to basics with the PPE. They're also never going to reopen our community. And like I said, I agree with you about the one thing. We should start promoting business in town. And that goes back to the 4th Street renovation. There's going to be a lot of opportunity for everybody. But I think the word needs to get out to everybody on certain groups. It needs to be shared. There's going to be opportunities for everybody. Yes, some people will fall by the wayside, but this is the nature of business. Business is business, sir. Some people are going to make it, some people are not. But if we continue at this rate of COVID-19, like I told one person, this whole streetcar is about to be because folly because somebody's want to come stand at it because you see the high rates there. We need to bring those down.
Thank you, Mark. George, can you give us your perspective?
Absolutely. I had got dropped, so I didn't get the first part of the question, but I think I can summarize. COVID and low income is an issue, absolutely. I think we're an entrepreneurial society, and what I see from the Latino people and from the Asian people, everybody's hard workers. People are going to invent things and make money off it. I'm seeing people selling masks on the street. They're opening up businesses, small businesses, and then they'll move into facilities. So I think without question, we're gonna come out of this. I don't know that there's anything a mayor can actually do for low-income housing other than ask Sacramento or the federal government for funds to help out. But I think if we motivate people and give them a little bit of leeway, pull back some of the regulation and say, yes, you can be a business owner, you can own a business, you can do this. People here in Santa Ana pull themselves up all the time. We just got to give them an opportunity to do that. And I think allowing them to pull themselves up out of the COVID pandemic, like the rest of the world is doing, is the best thing we can do for them. Give them a helping hand, get rid of some of the regulations, let them do it, make sure everything's up and up. If there's food stores, things like that, everything's inspected. But let people do what they need to do and what they already know how to do, but we've restricted them from it from over-regulation.
Thank you, George. Let's move on here. Vicente.
Yes, thanks for that question. And yeah, what the pandemic did show us is that we obviously have a lot of essential workers in Santa Ana that are, making commerce continue to operate now, but we realize that there are other underlying problems that we have, such as, just public health problems, right? We have people that are suffering, that already were suffering from diabetes, obesity, things that made them much more vulnerable to this virus. And we know that this public health crisis is going to be followed by an economic crisis. What I see is that, unfortunately, the vested agency responsible for this was the county to provide these, social services was just reckless in their way they carried things out, made us wait months and months to be able to provide the services that we're providing to now. I think the first thing that we need to do is get our community safe. We have some of the highest zip codes in the county with positivity rates for COVID. And we need to make sure that those communities, those families that live in overcrowded conditions with respect to, housing, again, going back to that, we have 2 and 3 families living to a unit. One person comes home that's sick, gets the entire household ill. The second thing is we're going to have to make sure we support our small and micro businesses because those are the ones that continue to pay into our revenues. They continue to, employ our folks. And we know that many of them are not going to survive. Many of them haven't. We're going on 7-8 months of this, and these are folks that don't have a safety net. They're not eligible for funding from the federal or state government. So we do have to look at a comprehensive approach on this. Thank you.
Thank you, Vicente. Jose, can you give us your take?
Yes, Thank you, Norberto. And by the way, good job on changing the order of who speaks. Very well done. First, I think we need to continue to do more outreach, and what the city of Santa Ana is doing. We're going to neighborhoods throughout the city and having major displays, and often tacos and the staff as well as testers, etc. We need to keep doing more of that. We're also working in partnership with Latino Health Access, and actually very recently we had a couple of meetings about how we might be able to work with them and get more promotoras and promotores on issues of health to help us with this outreach because we do have resources for that. And I'll just close with some of the earlier waves of these dollars that were going to the county, and we know like with homelessness and others, they're slow to spend those kinds of dollars and don't always spend them well. So I and others did work with our big city mayors as well as our legislature and governor to have the newer infusions go directly to large cities. So that's why we have $28 million to share with the community to make our community healthier and stronger. I really want to encourage, again, as many people as possible to go to that website to access those resources. That's santa-ana.org/cares, CARES. We have resources available for small businesses, utility support, testing, numerous things. But again, really one of the anchors is rental assistance, because many folks in our community do suffer economic hardships, and we have $10 million now in total that we have in that fund. So just encourage that the community go visit that site. Thank you.
Thank you, Jose. So that is it for our discussion session, and now we'll just go into the lightning round.
Norberto, I didn't get to answer the question on COVID.
Oh, I'm so sorry. You're right. I've got one more. I was celebrated here for being so orderly. Claudia, can you give us your perspective on the last question?
Absolutely. I could talk on this for hours, if you will. And since I'm last and you forgot about me, I'm going to take like 10 minutes. No, I'm not. All kidding aside, I will tell you, I am extremely disappointed at the way the city has handled this pandemic. And I know that they're pointing to the county, but you don't need the actual zip code to start acting on the pandemic. We know people were sick. We know that a big number was coming from Santa Ana. We know that we were on top of that list. The education should have gone out there sooner, quicker. The PPE should have been distributed. I mean, people were having parties with hundreds of people in their backyards with no masks and no enforcement. I think it's a little bit of Johnny come late. And then once they finally got there, to be giving tacos away. I mean, some of the scenes out there, it almost opens it up for people to get even more infected. I will tell you that at the college district, we acted quickly, and within days, we were able to pull our students from the colleges and our faculty and staff. And within days, we were able to have them all online. And we started working hard on making sure that people were able to get access to the internet and had the tools. And in fact, Santa Ana College got an award on how quickly we got the money to the students. This is not something you just wait on data and watch people die while you're waiting on this data. So to that extent, I look forward to making sure that the city has an effective plan. And I will tell you that as far as our community is concerned, we're not only going to get hit financially, we're going to get hit education-wise, we're going to get hit crime-wise, because as you know, COVID is rampant amongst our jails, right? People are getting released because COVID is rampant. We don't have enough room to give them the social distancing. We're going to get hit education-wise. So to that extent, I look forward to being at the table to work and address those issues.
Thank you, Claudia. So now we will move forward to the lightning round questions. I'll try to slow myself down a little bit because I talked a little bit fast yesterday on the lightning round. It is easy to sort of move fast. So again, we'll work with our translators here. But basically, they're very quick statements. They are frankly tough yes or no questions. The idea, I think, always is to have a sense of how you all will react to those. And I'll just kind of go up and down in order. So we'll start with the first one, which is, would you commit to adopting Indigenous Peoples Day in Santa Ana? Yes or no, Jose?
Yes, I'm interested in that.
Again, George, Indigenous Peoples Day in Santa Ana, yes or no?
Absolutely, no problem.
Claudia, Indigenous Peoples Day in Santa Ana, yes or no?
Yes.
Vicente, Indigenous Peoples Day. Mark.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Got it. Second question. Do you commit to build new affordable housing in the city? Mark.
No, sir.
Vicente,
Yes.
Claudia,
Yes.
George,
No.
Jose.
Yes.
Third question. Would you commit to support rent control? Jose.
I support the rent control law that's in place.
George, rent control.
No. Better income.
Claudia,
No.
Vicente,
Yes.
Mark. Mark?
No, sir. No, sir.
Thank you. This one is just pick one. Would you prioritize building homeless shelters or affordable housing to address homelessness? Mark,
Homeless shelter.
Vicente,
Affordable housing.
Claudia,
Affordable housing.
George,
Housing for the veterans, yes.
Jose?
Affordable housing.
Okay, let's go to the next question. Do you think, are you in favor of the housing first, are you in favor of using the housing first model to combat homelessness? Jose,
Yes.
George,
No.
Claudia,
Yes.
Vicente,
Yes.
Mark. Mark?
No. No, sir. No, sir.
Thank you, thank you. Next question. Do you believe that law enforcement should play a role in addressing the homelessness crisis? Mark?
No, sir.
Vicente?
I'm sorry, somebody muted me.
No
No.
problem. No. Claudia?
Yes.
George?
I actually don't understand the question, but yes, the police have a role.
Jose?
Yes.
Would you commit to supporting a citizen oversight committee with subpoena power for the Santa Ana Police Department? So again, would you support a citizen, meaning that it's independent, an oversight committee that has subpoena power over the Santa Ana Police Department? Jose?
Yes. Call the city council.
George?
No, we don't have the money.
Claudia?
No.
Vicente?
Yes.
Mark?
Can I give you a no? Can I give you a no comment on that one, because I can't honestly answer yes or no on that one.
No problem. Next question. Have you or do you accept any campaign contributions from law enforcement unions? Mark?
No, sir. No, sir. No contributions.
Vicente?
No.
Claudia?
The District Attorney Association, absolutely.
George?
No, I'm self-funding.
Jose?
Yes. Police and fire.
Next question. Would you commit to stand with the Black Lives Matter movement and with Santa Ana youth who are demanding a shift in public spending? Jose?
Black Lives Matter. Yes. Defunding the police. No.
George?
The youth, without question, yes, but I'm not going to get into a Marxist organization and supporting.
Claudia?
Yes, but not defunding the police.
Vicente?
Are we going to get to rewrite your questions on these? I thought this was a yes or no, but it's a yes. And if not, then we should all be able to explain our answers. So look, which we got to do it one way or the other, Norvetto.
Fair. Mark.
Abstain. Abstain.
Okay. Next question. Would you support a jail use contract with ICE or U.S. Marshals to bring money to the city that would involve incarcerating undocumented people of color and trans women? Mark.
Yes, sir. Yes.
Vicente.
No.
Claudia.
No.
George.
They commit crimes, yes.
Jose.
No new contractual.
Let's see here. Where are we at now? Would you commit to supporting? Go ahead. Did I miss somebody? Yeah. Okay. Next question. Would you commit to supporting worker cooperatives, businesses owned by their workers that understand their community's needs by creating opportunities for them to receive city contracts? So again, the question would be is, would you support city cooperatives getting city contracting opportunities? Mark.
Yes, sir.
Vicente.
Yes.
Claudia.
Yes.
George.
Yes, absolutely.
Jose. I think you're on mute, Jose, or I didn't hear you.
Yes.
Sorry. Okay. Last one. Would you commit to integrating street vendors, cooperatives, non-traditional local entrepreneurs into pandemic relief efforts that are being made available to small businesses? Jose.
Yes.
George.
I said that earlier, yes. Entrepreneurs.
Claudia.
Yes.
Vicente.
Yes.
Mark.
No, no, sir.
Okay, we're going to move now. That's it for the lightning round. And again, all of these questions have come from the community. The 4 different community groups did a wonderful job for weeks to go out and get questions from people of what they were interested in and what they want to hear answers to. So just again, we'll be moving now to the closing statements. And I believe we were going to give, was it a minute and a half like we did for opening statements for closing? So we'll start
our
off.
minute and a half, Norvetto. Let's be clear this time.
For the record, I was clear the last time, but minute and a half for closing.
Okay.
Mark, can we start with you? Mark? Mark, are you?
Yes, sorry about it. Yeah, I run for mayor because I have a sense of duty to my country. Ever since I retired from the military, I still have a sense of serving in some capacity. I mean, I run for mayor because I'm not looking for a stepping stone office. I know no special interest or labor union. I run because I see the daily happenings in Santa Ana, and some what I see today I'm not too happy with. Like I can't even get my street fixed over there. They told me 2 years ago they would fix it 5 years from now, but still there's issue with that. I guarantee if I'm elected, I want to be more kinetic in my office, in the office of mayor. I will go out to the populace and talk about what they need. I will try to make easier for our residents to become involved in our electoral process and our decision-making process. The citizens of Santa are owed this, and I think it's time for new dynamic leadership in City Hall because a lot of rhetoric I heard tonight, I've heard it every year, and the same old stuff every year. And I'm really tired of calling our immigrant community essential workers because they clean houses or cook our food. I want our community of immigrants to be essential workers as doctors, lawyers. I'd like to see more Hispanics in the fire department. I'd like to see more Hispanics in the police department. I'm tired of even guys like Kevin Dion, our state speaker said Kevin Dion said all our essential workers like dishwashers, cooks, mechanics. No. That's the reason I formed the Mexican American Advisory Group. I want to emulate these immigrants essential workers like doctors, I said lawyers, up in social strata. And I know tonight I was a bit blunt, but I think tonight we need those direct responses. And like I said, some of the questions I did abstain from, but here's my telephone number, 714-371-3506. Don't based on the things I said on emotion. Give me a call and I'll explain to you more in depth about my decision making. I think you really guiding to what I'm trying to do for our society. Thank you.
Thank you, Mark.
You're welcome, sir.
Jose, can you go next?
Yes, thank you. Again, special thanks to you, Norvetto, and Latino Health Access, and all the organizers and Usuri who started us off. My name is Jose Solorio. I'm running for mayor. I was born in Michoacan, Mexico, raised here in California. I mentioned a few things at the beginning, but I'll just add a little bit more on the issues and priorities that I feel our community has. First and foremost is public safety. We need to keep reducing 911 emergency response times. With respect to what kind of services we want from our PD, I think we should do citywide surveys so we can hear directly from residents rather than different groups or individuals that sometimes have a louder voice than others. I also think we need to lead a little bit more forcefully on homelessness and COVID crises, because although there's been efforts, I do think we could have done more, and we need to be more aggressive. In terms of expanding family programs, with COVID going on, we really have to get those resources out and keep seeking more resources from the state or federal government. Part of that, but also just to help with our youth in general, we want to grow, or I want to grow the number of Wi-Fi programs, internship programs in our community. Also our seniors, you know, they're hit the hardest with COVID and have the most fatalities, and we got to do a little bit better there. It's particularly creating new check-in programs for them. And then finally, we need to focus more on neighborhoods. You know, there are some neighborhoods that are a little bit wealthier, a little bit more affluent. Things may be nicer there. And I want to make sure that we focus more resources citywide on all our neighborhoods to fix more streets, sidewalks, and lights, improve safety at our parks and schools, including growing our park security program. Thank you. Thank you.
George.
Yeah, I want to thank everybody. Across the top of my screen is www.collins4mayor.org. Most of these questions have been answered there, either in video, in PowerPoint, or in typing. The emails across the bottom, george@santa-ana.tv. Obviously, I do television. I thought one of the topics tonight was going to be transparency, so I could talk about how I filmed the city council meetings when they were running from the zoo to community centers, avoiding downtown. So I'm one that wants openness in Santa Ana. I'm really tired of the image of Santa Ana. We can do so much better if we work together. With your help and your support, we can make a complete change in Santa Ana. We won't be talking about knowing when we get into Santa Ana because of the bad streets. We won't be listening to businesses complain because it takes them 2 years to get anything done from the city. We need to work together. We need to have a directional shift, a directional change in Santa Ana, going from the, oh, help me, to we can help ourselves. We're big, we're strong, we're 27 square miles. There are countries in Europe that are smaller than this. So we can do what we want to do if we set our minds to it. I would appreciate your support and your help so we can shift Santa Ana, support the Asian community, the Afro-American community, the veterans that need help, all the people that are down right now because of COVID. We can reach out to them if we all work together, we all build together, lower some of the restrictions we have, and get through this. Thank you so much for your support.
Thank you, George. Claudia, can you give us your closing?
Absolutely. Thank you, Norberto. I want to thank everyone for all the issues that we touched upon tonight. Very important issues. We clearly had a lot of work to do. I do want to give a special shout out to our DACA students. It's their week, right? We support them all year, but this is their week. I'd like to share with them that I became a full-fledged licensed attorney a whole year before I became a citizen of this country. And I will tell you, Mark, that I actually, I'm an essential worker as a deputy district attorney. But I do want to give a shout out to all of our essential workers, whether you're a cook, a janitor, any type of work you're doing out there. Thank you for exposing yourselves and your lives, if you will, to serve our community. I raised my hand to run for mayor back in October 2019, before the pandemic, before the George Floyd protests. And I did that because I was very frustrated in watching that poor decision making that was taking place since I left. The city was in way better shape when I left in 2012. Crime is now up. We have let go of 4 or 5 city managers, each of them costing us thousands of dollars. 2 police chiefs have been walked out, costing us thousands of dollars. Council members gave themselves a 700% raise, and we have an outrageous tax with nothing to show for it. On top of it, through the pandemic that's been poorly handled, and the issues that we need to resolve regarding George Floyd. I am that experienced change that Santa Ana is seeking. I will do my best job as mayor with the experience that I have. And I will tell you, I have not endorsed any of the council candidates. I think they're all very impressive, but I think it's exciting that for the first time in 26 years, we're going to have a new mayor and we're going to vote by district. So I look forward to working with those council members that the district elect. Thank you, Bob Alvarez for mayor 2020. Thanks.
Thank you, Claudia. Vicente.
Yeah, thank you, Norberto, and thank you to everybody that put this together. I also want to thank those candidates that are running for mayor. Running isn't easy for any office, and this one especially. It is historic, so I'm glad that there is a lot of people already voting. I know that there's about 20% of folks here in the city that have already cast their ballot. I know that unfortunately the registrar of voters wanted to limit the number of drop boxes and voting centers, and we compelled them to do more and to put more in the south end of town. And that was something that we, here in Santa Ana, we have a bad history of suppressing votes. We're the city where they had armed guards at polling places back in the 80s, and that is a bad legacy that we have. So I'm glad that people are exercising their right. I think as people vote, please take a look at all the candidates that are out there. I think the comparison is obvious when you start looking. I'm not a Trump supporter. I'm not being supported by the POA. I'm not, anybody who wants to do things that are going to suppress the community's voice. I think we had hundreds of people show up at council meetings and, most of them youth, and they were disregarded, they were ignored. And that's something that needs to change. We need to start listening to the people that put us in office, but those people that reside in the city that we're in. Those issues need to be led by the community. We need to listen to the community. We shouldn't dictate to the community. And that's been the problem, that a lot of people who hold office believe that they're more intelligent than the community that they serve. We need to be their servants. Things are flipped. So I thank you all for the time and the opportunity to address you. If you want to learn more about our campaign efforts, sarmientoformayor.com. Thank you for the opportunity.
Thank you, Vicente. Much appreciated. And thanks to all of the wonderful candidates for mayor. We've had a great discussion. We always appreciate people that have put themselves out there for public office. It's a grueling job to do so. Campaigning is not easy. Fundraising, answering questions. So we really appreciate the graciousness of everybody who showed up and the wonderful cooperation and great debate that we had. Special thanks again to all of the organizers, Latino Health Access, the Santa Ana Building Healthy Communities Coalition, the It Rise, the Kennedy Commission. Thanks again to our wonderful translators, Veronica Perez, Lluvia Cardenas, and Jade Tu. Really a historic debate in the sense that we've been able to simultaneously translate this and bring a lot more people into the process. So we really do appreciate everybody reaching out. Stay engaged, stay involved. Tomorrow night, feel free to come back again. We'll have another discussion about the future of Santa Ana School Board. And this year, I think more than ever before, we've seen how these school districts are just so relevant to all of the different families that live in our city. So again, come back tomorrow night, same time, same channel, and we expect another wonderful debate. Thanks again for all of the candidates for joining us and putting yourselves out there.